Welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict live. All right, good to see everybody here.
Dr. Ross Stewart and
Dr. David Wararu.
And it's a pleasure to be with you today. We really appreciate the multitude of comments that we're receiving. Such positive, we weren't quite prepared for it, but we're delighted to have it. And it's international, and we get invitations for topics. Please do that. Send us things you really want to hear about.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. I mean, we thank you. We thank you very much for that. And the whole idea of this is to grow the channel in order to reach a large audience, because we feel we need to raise awareness regarding geopolitical issues, because geopolitical topics, some of us think, well, it has nothing to do with me. No, it does. It has to do everything with all of us. It impacts us, our families, our businesses, our finances, you name it. So sometimes they say, what happened in China or Latin America have nothing to do with us here. No, it does. So, and this is the reason why we doing the shows and sharing the knowledge and information with you all.
Something's going on in outer space.
Well, that's correct. So I know we're going to be talking today about the possibility of China invading Taiwan. But before that, we wanted to bring your attention to two main topics that have not been aggressively covered by the US media. The first one has to do with the Ukraine-Russia conflict that's going on, which we talked about last Friday, but it happened right after we finished. So what happened basically is that Russia decided now to block certain areas in the Black Sea for about 6 months till October 1st. And usually that says a lot about where that conflict is going. And the second topic, as Ross mentioned, has to do with space. Yesterday, China launched its first model of 3 for its permanent space station. I know, that's why we're not hearing much about it here in the US. Because
it's not being aggressively pursued at all in the United States.
No.
But other countries are really reporting it in real depth. Well, they see the significance of China putting the first module of 3 up in space. That means they're a hop, skip, and a jump away from having a full setup.
Well, actually, that space station is going to be completed by next year. That's how fast they went, which means they're going to have their own ISS, International Space Stations, and they're going to be planning having astronauts to live there about 6 months. The point is not about just this, but the point is how fast they've achieved this. This is a great endeavor, which, because the ISS, the one that is by the United States, only has about probably 10 more years. It's old. It's been there for a while. This one that China, it's in the process of putting together. It will be there for the next 15, 20 years. So,
David, do you remember when the Chinese were excluded from the International Space Station?
That was about, I think, about 7 or 8 or 10 years ago, when Congress passed a legislation banning China from entering ISS for security reasons. I mean, China said, "Heck with it. We're gonna have our own." So that's what.
So here's the response to this kind of blockage of China. We'll do it ourselves. And they did.
Exactly. And one of the modules is based on the Mir, the Russians' structure or model.
Yeah.
And the rest of them is going to be changed. Very, very impressive. I had a chance to see yesterday some pictures of it. The internal structure, very, very high-tech stuff. So anyway, we wanted just to let you know about this. So let's get into the topic today.
Oh boy.
We're going to be talking about Taiwan.
How sticky do you want to get with this thing?
Exactly. Well, the whole reason why we wanted to address the Taiwan issue is given the tensions that's going on right now between China and Taiwan. And a lot of Western capitals are wondering, is China about to invade Taiwan?
This looks like a catastrophe in the making. You know, you look at some of this stuff historically and what's going on with China today, and all the places that they have conflict with their neighbors over the borders.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have is 5,000 years of empire, dynasties, and any place that was a part of the Chinese, any Chinese dynasty, China is currently claiming. That's why they have these issues with India. That's why they have them with Russia, with all their neighbors, because they think that they're still part of that dynasty.
Yeah.
And now we look at Hong Kong and we wonder, how come the Chinese did that now? How come they're going after Taiwan so aggressively now?
Well, there might be an answer to it. Not sure, but and this is my own opinion, is that the United States is preoccupied with the domestic issues.
Oh boy.
That is the reason why. And to China, it's now or never. But there is one key thing that China does not want, because an independent Taiwan, it will be a stain on the legitimacy of the Chinese government.
They'll lose face.
Exactly. And this is why I've always believed in this, because I did enough research in my other books that I wrote before. And in my current one that I'm doing currently about China, is that I strongly believe that China will go into a war over Taiwan. The reason being because not only is strategic, but Western audience do not understand the history of that part of the world. And we're not going to go back some 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
We'll go back just to 1912.
Yeah.
When the Qing dynasty, Qing spelled, by the way, Qing.
And it's pronounced Qing.
Qing. There we go. Yeah. It's Western
My
pronunciation.
Mandarin training is
Well, see, it comes handy that you are learning Mandarin, Ross. That's very, very, very good. So the history of it, the West does not understand that. And to China, it might have other sort of objectives for that, and I can see why, economically and geopolitically. And we're going to address, by the way, all this in great depth
in a subsequent broadcast.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole show about this one. We just wanted first to address this issue for you to know what's going on with Taiwan and why it is important for China.
And there's so much at risk here. You know, I have to ask some of the questions about, well, how come there's so many, this is so multifaceted. We look at the history, let's say Mao Zedong, and how come he didn't take on Taiwan? Well, the U.S. was right there saying, come on, this is just, this is in the early 50s. And say, we'll nuke you. And so Mao Zedong said, well, maybe we can deal with the internal unrest and setting up a legitimate government to try to run the show. But you take a look at Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party, they're still heavily influenced by Mao Zedong.
Well, it is.
President Xi, he was raised as a hardcore communist, heavily influenced by Mao Zedong. And so some of that thinking still prevails. So it's multifaceted and it's complicated.
And there is a saying in China that goes, Mao was for one, Deng was for prosperity or wealth, and Qi is for strength. So it's just the dynamics of Taiwan and China. It's so complicated that we just hear what the West is saying about. Well, the West, of course, because of the sale of weapon to Taiwan, but all of us know
$25 billion.
Since 2007, they've been arming Taiwan. But we all know that is no match. However, Taiwan has an advantage. This is why China will have to think twice about invading. An invasion will not work. As a former military myself, an invasion, the way you and I understand it, it's not going to work. It's because the island is surrounded. Half of its terrains are rugged. There is no, and the way you get into Taiwan, you only have the entrance from the front, which
means all the soldiers are targets, easy targets.
Yeah, and you have about 160 kilometers from the mainland to Taiwan. So all Taiwan needs to do is place, which he already did, place in all its missiles. And now they are even purchasing about 8 submarines from the US.
Wow.
So you can just see that's why China will have to think very, very carefully about the military option. Now, China has other options to deal with Taiwan.
Yeah, they're all economic.
Which will be far devastating than a war. It is my belief that if they can choke the maritime ways, they'll choke off Taiwan. So, and all Taipei will be forced to say, let's sit down and negotiate.
We got a lot of comments today.
So, yeah, because it's a hot, the topic in itself is very, very controversial. One thing about the U.S., just for you to know, one thing about the U.S. has always approached, especially during the Reagan era, was the security ambiguity. What I mean by that is that the U.S. approach to Taiwan made it so ambiguous that for China, it will think, okay, what will happen if we attack Taiwan? Will Washington react? And for Taiwan, that ambiguity was, we better not do something stupid that Washington will not support us, like declaring independence.
Right.
So, and even today, there are those who are saying, some global analysts, and I read some global analysis regarding this aspect, there are those who are saying the West might not come to the aid of Taiwan the way it's been propagated. It's just for domestic consumption. We have to support Taiwan. We have democracy and all of that. The West will realize that this will become, because a conflict in that part of the world will go beyond that border.
Oh,
far beyond. And I
absolutely.
guarantee you this, it will trigger some far, far bigger issues. And you're going to be looking at Japan getting involved, South Korea getting involved, Russia getting involved, Philippines, Vietnam, you name it. It's not going to be pretty. And this is why China will have to evaluate its options. At least the military is there on the table, but it might not go forward right away. And for one reason, if I may add, Ross, for one reason only, because China does not have experience in amphibious warfare. Which amphibious, just to let you know what I mean by this, is when you have land, air, and sea coordination precisely to the dot. And that's not an easy task to achieve, especially in an invasion. And China has no experience with that.
Well, we're also looking at the threat of Taiwan, saying, hey, Three Gorges Dam, it's vulnerable, and we've got missiles aimed that direction. How'd you like to lose that thing? I mean, these are really awful threats.
Yeah, and I don't think so. As pragmatic as the Chinese are, of course, it's not going to be reported here. And by the way, we're not advocating for China here.
Not at all.
No, we're just saying what's objective. It just Chinese tends to think through before taking an action, and the Taiwan issue is one of those topics that China will have to really, really consider the consequences of that action. Now, there are those who said, well, it's a foregone conclusion that China's going to attack Taiwan after what happened in Hong Kong. So, well, if you go back in history, because Hong Kong and Macau,
yeah,
they fall under China. Well, Taiwan decided, no, we're gonna go at it alone. There are no guarantees to that. There are no guarantees, and I can just foresee the challenges that's going to be. So one of the challenges that I believe China will face if they go with the invasion, it will be the population, the Taiwanese. Well, the Taiwanese, they see themselves as the Hans.
Yeah.
The Taiwanese.
Yes.
They don't consider themselves Chinese. They consider themselves.
As a matter of fact, they call themselves Taiwanese.
Taiwanese, yeah. So, and the problem with that, an invasion like that, it's going to become, what if the population revolts against that? Because that was exactly throughout the history of China back after 1912, the fall of the dynasty. That's how the Communist Party fought the nationalists and took over. And the Republic of China fled to Taiwan and set Taipei as their capital. So China is very attentive to this kind of how they're going to manage the population should they go with the invasion. And this is why I believe, and this is my opinion, the military option it's not at the top of the list. So, and China is going to be thinking in terms of economic pressure. But one thing is sure, China's patience is running out. It's because this coincides with China's ascendancy to global stage.
Oh, yeah.
You won't want to have this. You won't want to have this issue not resolved. This is what I believe President Xi's vision moving forward is, because he's 74 years old. And he wants this to happen under his watch. Brought Taiwan back to the mainland peacefully. But he didn't rule out other, and I quote here, measures that he said, and the quote, that he could consider moving forward with this. So this is where we see things going with Taiwan. So we're gonna open up this for your questions about not only this one, but also if you want to ask questions about what's going on with the blockade in Black Sea. But we're gonna focus on the Taiwan here. So let's see the first question from Ariel Propel. Thank you very much, Ariel, for your question. And the question is, do you think that Taiwan peaceful reunification with China will redefine geopolitical dynamics?
Oh, good question.
That is a good question, Ariel. We thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. It will. The reason being because one of the strategic things that China is thinking about, it's not only about bringing Taiwan to the mainland, but also taking over completely will allow China access to strain of islands that stretches from Archipelago in Japan all the way to Indonesia. So, and the reason for that, the maritime, the transit of goods through those waters is very, very, very crucial.
And important to all the countries in that region.
In that part. And as we know, the Asia is going to be, it is the center now of the global economy. You can just see who dominate the waters will dominate the flow of goods. Of course, Japan and South Korea is not going to like that, but this is China's big picture.
Right.
Taking care of Taiwan will allow it to do this and also ensure the South China Sea access. Let's say the next question. Next question from Asha Bashista. Thank you very much for your question. And by the way, thank you, Asha, for your comments, because I do respond to some of your comments. Russ also does that as well. The question is, Taiwan's independence violated the Constitution of the Republic of China, which is now the Taiwan government. I see what you mean by that, because if we all remember, back in 1971, the United Nations recognized the CCP. It didn't recognize Taiwan. That's why it did not have a representation in the UN. And in 1978, Jimmy Carter, at that time, the former US president, said it is to the strategic interest of the United States to recognize China as one country, two separate systems.
Two systems, one country.
However, even in that declaration of Jimmy Carter, it says the United States will maintain unofficial relations with Taiwan. Basically, when it comes down to the sale of weapons, that's basically. As of today, there are only about 14 countries, in addition to the Vatican, around the world that recognize Taiwan. That's about it. And even with those, some of them start to cut ties with Taiwan because they are seeing where China's headed.
Yeah.
And if you are a head of state, you're going to have to think about the welfare of your nation economically. And do I want to maintain ties with Taiwan but get nothing in return? Or do I want to cut my ties with Taiwan and
have a great relationship with China, a trade relationship,
economically speaking? So this is where it's going. As to will it change the geopolitical dynamics? Yes, it will, especially in the Pacific. Tian Wang, hi Tian, thank you for the question. The question says, okay, even when Xi's father was in prison, Xi still avidly and diligently read Mao's books.
Yes.
You're absolutely correct about that one. Xi's father was sort of purged, if you will.
He fell out of political favor, and that did not stop Xi Jinping from being a devout communist
Yeah.
and studying the works of Mao Zedong and others.
Yeah, but you know what? It was his dad that encouraged him for that. He encouraged him to really, really keep an understanding of what the Communist Party was all about. And this is why Xi today is the link to that era.
Right.
And this is why I believe this is for his own legacy, but also for China, for him to bring Taiwan while he's still alive, if you will. And
you know, a consideration here is that the young generation, as we talked to them in various cities that we were in, they had a very different view of things. They had information, and they were saying things like, "Yeah, we know that the old, you know, the hardliners and so on, but they are going to die off, and a new generation of Chinese people are going to take control, and they have very different views."
yeah,
So if Xi Jinping is going to get this done, it better be in his lifetime.
yeah.
While he still has that much power.
And that's why they wanted to get it done now. Also, why
Yeah.
the U.S. is okay, because we have a mess here at home domestically. And the last thing, if anything, history, and we tend to be, and I don't speak on behalf of every American here. No. It's just in general term, we tend to be poor readers of history. So if there is anything history teaches us is that Napoleon Bonaparte made the same mistake. Adolf Hitler made the same mistake by engaging in two fronts.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't engage. So the United States, in terms of thinking, no, we can engage in two fronts, that's nonsense. We will be whipped if we ever do that. And China realizing we better take care of this now before it's too late. John, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you so much for your question. Is there enough Taiwanese that want to join China? Is an internal support for joining China? What do you think, Ross? You've been there. You've been in mainland.
But also
you
been
talk
keeping
to
up with
people.
that. And over 50% of the Taiwanese want to be independent from mainland China, the Chinese Communist Party. But there's a substantial number of people who have family in mainland China,
Mhm.
who are essentially supporters of the Chinese Communist Party. So it's not such an easy thing. Well, it's a united population. It is not. It's very mixed.
Certainly, and that's why I said earlier that a military invasion, China will have to think in terms what the reaction of the population will be, because they're going to be looking to China, and not only Taiwanese, but also the rest of the world as a paper tiger, for that matter. They're going to be like, it's China because it's big and all that stuff. You got 23 million Taiwanese in Taiwan.
And they got a large standing army, a large reserve, a lot of ferocious weapons, and a hell of a fight on their hands if they decide to go forward. The real risk here is they're going to lose face after making all this noise.
That's correct, and that's why they're going to be very careful. But as to the people inside Taiwan, it's divided. At least based on
clearly divided.
Yeah, based on what we found, our research led us to believe the population in Taiwan is divided. Regardless what the West saying that all Taiwanese want democracy and so forth, that's not what we found. So, Bob Moran, thank you very much, Bob, for your question. If China solves the chip supremacy of Taiwan, that completely makes it independent of Taiwan chip industry, is that an economic incentive for Taiwanese to reconsider their independence to China?
Oh, good question.
That is an interesting question.
Interesting, yeah.
So, well, go ahead, Ross, if you want.
What we have is three major producers of chips, and we know that the world economy and technology is really dependent on chip production, and there's currently a shortage. And Taiwan is one of the three major producers. And China is very actively engaged in creating their own manufacturing facilities. Mm. So this is a really interesting question. What is the fate of Taiwan if China succeeds? They failed over and over and over again, but they're really devoting resources to it because they know that their technological development is dependent on their readily available chips.
So that's correct. Well, as of today, both Taiwan and China, they sort of benefit economically from each other, and also because of the way it's set.
Billions of dollars.
Yeah, our opinion, well, my opinion, I'll speak for myself here. I'm sure Ross might have a different opinion. we don't have to agree together. So, my opinion is that the chip issue thing, that's not the reason why China wants to to bring Taiwan into the mainland. That's just one aspect of it. Of course, if they take over Taiwan, it's gonna be managed by who's gonna sit on the board. It's gonna be the pro-Chinese government, whatever that is. But to think in terms of only the chip is what's leading to this endeavor, I would say no, because
we don't have any evidence to say that that's the real reason.
Yeah, because China has other economic incentives elsewhere around the world, given that its GDP just reached about 18.5%.
Remarkable.
So
absolutely remarkable.
So Taiwan, to them, the chip aspect of it, while it plays a role, it's not everything. Next question, Benson Dai. Thank you very much for your question, Benson. What is the advantage and disadvantage for both China and Taiwan if they reunified? Those are good questions, guys. We thank you so much for
this. That's a tough one.
And this is one of the reasons why we decided to devote our time to this channel, because we wanted to grow. And because of individual subscribers like yourselves, that's what fuels us to keep going with this, bringing up-to-date information regarding topics that sometimes do not get covered by the media. So to go back to your question, which I forgot the question already.
What's the ups and the downs of reunification?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to see a lot of really unhappy people in Taiwan who have experienced great economic growth, a large middle class, real democracy in action, and a standard of living that is really the envy of the world. I mean, this is a really modern country. You take a deep dive into what life is like there, they have a good life.
Yeah, so I don't see the disadvantage of it. I mean, it will be, again, I could be wrong. But the way I see it is that China, given the sensitivity of Taiwan, hypothetically, the reunification takes place, Beijing will be very aware of the sensitivities of the ethnic Han in Taiwan. So China wouldn't want to impose things on the ethnically Han individuals, because it will backfire on China's reputation first. That's like what's going on right now with the Uyghur.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the minority. Well, all we're hearing in the West about this human rights abuses and all that stuff, which we didn't find any. I mean,
we did a really deep dive into the Uyghurs and Xinjiang, and we couldn't find any real evidence. We don't want to devote a lot of time to that.
No, we're not. Yeah.
But dramatic increase in the quality of life, and a real boost to the entire region.
And that's exactly what I foresee with Taiwan, because China will be very sensitive to that. I sincerely believe that. They will be very sensitive to making sure that the ethnic Han are not oppressed or treated differently and what have you. So I don't see this advantage much. So, all right, we'll do one last question here, and it would be from Brian Washington. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you asking the question. If Russia invades Ukraine at the same time as China invades Taiwan, which fight will the U.S. pick? Oh my gosh, Brian.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Brian, for that. I don't know if I have an answer, man. That is a good question. And this is what we said earlier. Will the U.S. be in a position to fight two fronts? I do not think so. Given how things are in the U.S., I just do not think so. Which one the U.S. will pick, I do not know. It's because you're dealing with two major powers, nuclear armed. Of course, Russia with over 6,000 nuclear warhead versus China's about 475 or so, give or take. So they both have that. It's one of those tough questions. I don't believe even somebody in the Pentagon will be able to answer that question.
You're right.
Yeah, because it's a very poignant, and this is where we like to have the conversation on, because it's those type of questions that we need to address, because those will have the outcome of that decision will have a major impact on geopolitical landscape on a global level.
Will it ever?
Yeah. So the answer, Brian, is I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one, but that's a very interesting one. As a matter of fact, we might even consider doing that as a video on it, because why not? We will do that.
You're right.
So, well, we wanna thank you so much for your time, sharing the time with us here. We want to thank all of you for the questions. I'm sure we can't get to all of them because we do have other obligations we have to attend to with the private forum we have. And once again, just spread the word about the channel as we try to grow larger here to reach a larger audience. And we truly, truly and sincerely appreciate your support.
And in closing, stay informed.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.